I'm supposed to let everybody know that they're being recorded and transcribed, so please go ahead and jump off the meeting if you are uncomfortable with that. Otherwise, my name is Melissa Wenzel. I'm the Built Environment Sustainability Administrator for Minnesota Pollution Control Agency and the host of our quarterly Built Environment meetings. We have a great lineup of speakers, both outside and inside of Minnesota, and other updates that we'll be sharing with you today. We have carved out some time today for networking. That's something in us, after a year of these meetings, we sent out a survey to make sure that we're meeting the needs of people who attend these meetings. And that was something that came out in that survey. So we have some specific questions that can get that social networking going. One thing I wanted to mention is that there are two conferences coming up that'll be of interest to people. And the first one's actually on Tuesday, October 4th. It's the Minnesota Reuse Conference. A lot of you have received information about it or are attending, and that's great. From what I understand right now, there's maybe some volunteer opportunities to attend in person. Otherwise, being able to attend virtually is the sole option, I believe, for the conference right now. So it's on Tuesday. I'll throw a link, and unless somebody beats me to it, to the event, to the conference. And I am speaking. Actually, a number of people who are in this room are actually speaking, and there are a number of people within this meeting who are actual board members. And so I thank everybody who's been part of the planning team, who's been part of getting speakers, and then obviously for organizing the actual conference itself. So there are some pre-conference events happening on Monday afternoon and evening. And then the conference is in Minneapolis or virtual on Tuesday all day. So you'll have to show up to see what I'm going to be talking about. I'm with a panel of speakers.
Melissa, I will note too, I think there's just, if anyone wants, given the topic of the meeting, if anyone wants to go to Patrina's, to Scrapbox Salvage, I think there's just a couple more spots on that for the Monday tour. So if anyone is interested, I don't have access to chat. This happened to me the last Teams call I was on. Like I literally have the bubbles not there for me, so I can't drop a link. But there are a couple more spots for that. And then what's that?
Do you still need volunteers?
I think we might be done with volunteers at this point. Yep, we may need one more. But virtual is an option, and one of the virtual sessions is all about building materials. Hennepin County will be do some reporting out. So for folks in this meeting specifically, there is one session that's all about that.
Excellent. I did throw a link into the chat, and as somebody who does volunteer with a personal Teams account, if I'm logged in as a guest, I don't have chat. I am sometimes logged in as a guest for the city that I'm volunteering with, and then I do have chat, and I've never been able to figure out the difference between the two or what I'm doing differently each time I log in. So that's what I know about Teams and not having chat. The next event that's coming up is October 18th through 20th. The National Build Reuse Conference is coming up, and similarly, a lot of people who are in this virtual meeting today are attending. And I'm very, very proud that the next speaker for today's meeting is also speaking at the Build Reuse Conference. I'm extremely flattered when Joanne Rodriguez reached out to me to say, I would like you to be the host, the interview for that Build Reuse Conference. And we're still working out the final details for that. But this is the premier conference for the built environment nationally, which also includes Canada, and of course, people from Mexico are welcome too. But this is a big conference, and tools in the toolbox, we want to be deliberately helpful with giving people things that they can take away and implement within their locality. And it'll be a great opportunity to network with others. And the group is so nimble that when I suggested last year, can we have student rates also include college grads and people who are enrolled in Minnesota's Green Corps program, they loved it. They thought it was a great idea, and we did increase our attendance because of that. And we're offering that again. So the student rate or recent grad or anybody enrolled in any AmeriCorps program can attend the entire conference for $15. There's also a bring the team rate, so you can bring yourself and then bring others at a very deeply discounted rate. So I did put a link into the schedule and where to register, and that is October 18th through 20th, and it is virtual. I believe it is 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. Central Time, and that's Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, 18th through the 20th. Any questions before we jump to our first guest speaker? And we can certainly answer after the presentation has occurred as well. So Joanne, I am so pleased to announce that she is speaking with us today. And
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, getting a little feedback from you, but I don't think it's too bad.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I actually was presenting at another conference, so I'm in the hotel lobby. So I'm trying to be sequestered in a small little corner and not be too intrusive to all the conversations. If it gets too loud, let me know, and I'll mute and let you present.
Oh, I don't think you want that. I don't think you do. Joanne and I met each other at the Circularity 2020 conference. It was virtual, and thanks to generous sponsors, it was free for everybody. And it was in the summer of 2020, and over 12,000 people across the world registered. I popped into a 2.5-minute random speed networking opportunity, and I met Joanne among 40 other great people that I'm now connected to regularly on the built environment. And that 2.5 minutes really, it's hard for me to express in a very short amount of time how much I'm impressed by what Joanne is doing, not just in terms of a business strategy, but solving some really, really hard problems on pollution from C&D materials and beyond. So I'm very pleased to announce Joanne is presenting to us, and because I haven't been monitoring the slides, I have forgotten to show the agenda. So that is here. Joanne is next. And if you would like to introduce yourself, anybody who's in this meeting, please feel free to share your name, organization, where you are, and what brought you here in chat. We'll be able to do this in the networking session too, so don't feel like you have to rush while listening to Joanne. Joanne, go ahead and take it away, please.
Absolutely. And Melissa has been great. I mean, if you're here and you've interacted with her at all, you know what an advocate she is. And she has grown to be a great colleague, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be here and speak to this group. So I am Joanne Rodriguez. I'm the founder and CEO of Mycocycle. I have spent 30 years in construction products and material manufacturing at multiple levels, but the last position of my career, I was with a company for almost 17 years. They made roofing and building envelope materials for commercial construction, and I was their director of sustainable and strategic initiatives. And while I was at that organization, I quickly came to learn that we weren't able to recycle the materials that we were tearing off of buildings. We had issues with our industrial manufacturing waste. And this was all happening about the same time that we saw large building owners like the federal government decide that they would like to get to zero waste. We had corporates that wanted to get to zero waste, and we weren't able to help them. And so fast forward to 2017, and I decided to embark on a solution to this issue. I went into environmental consulting, leaving the corporate world, and I ended up taking a course in permaculture design. And I learned about the power of mushrooms and their innate ability to clean the environment and recycle some of the chemicals and pollutants that are found in nature, naturally and man-made. And I decided, why not try to put this onto some of the construction materials that are made of the same types of constituents. And so that's a little bit of the genesis story of where Mycocycle came from. I started it at the end of 2018, just protecting the idea, the intellectual property, and then incubating and accelerating in 2019, and then launching in 2020, just in time for the pandemic. So my timing is maybe not always perfect, but we're still here and we're growing. And I'm based outside of Chicago, Illinois. And our organization's in a building mode. So I'm going to tell you a little bit more about the technology and what we've been up to. And so you can get a greater sense of what we're trying to impact. I'm gonna do the next slide. So problems and solutions. The problem here is that there's 660 million tons of construction and demolition waste in the United States every year alone. That's twice the amount of municipal solid waste. This is a statistic that comes directly from the World Economic Forum, and I'm sure many of you in this space are familiar with, otherwise we wouldn't all be here discussing the problem. The larger issue, in addition to landfills being at or near capacity, are the emissions coming from the waste management industry. 16% of all man-made methane comes from the waste management industry. And on the built environment side, 11% of all CO2e comes from materials used in the built environment. And I get a lot of pushback around here. People say, oh, well, it's organics that lead to the methane. And, oh, well, it's concrete that leads to the CO2. I kind of say, like, these numbers are pretty big and we need to chip away at some of them with some of these newer technologies. I may not be addressing the concrete issue today, but I could be opening the door for that conversation. So before anybody comes at me and says, well, wait a minute, these statistics are greenwashing. No, they're absolutely true. And construction and demolition plays a large role in both of those statistics. And we need to like curb our evil ways of how we dispose and reuse materials, because it's a human and environmental health concern globally. And I just know we can do better to create value from waste. So next slide. So I started Mycocycle based on this course I took in permaculture design, based on the fact that fungi are natural cleaners of the earth. They are recycling and building out in nature without our help. They've been doing it for centuries, so it's time tested. And I drew my inspiration from this to say, okay, if it can clean heavy petroleums and pesticides and other constituents in nature, could we deploy it for commercial technology at scale to solve a large problem? So next slide. And so this is why mushrooms, right? Graphically, microremediation, which is the science we deploy, is known to already clean up a lot of issues: agricultural waste, pharmaceutical waste, dyes and detergents. What we're really focused on at Mycocycle are the polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, heavy metals, and phthalates that we find commonly in petroleum-based building materials. So anything from asphalt roofing to gypsum drywall, to even polypropylene and polyethylene fibers that are in carpets and reinforcing fabrics for walls. And so there's there are many different ways to go after these things in nature, but there was not really a known pathway to go after it in an industrialized application. And these are taken from studies. There's a large body of work around the viability of microremediation and cleaning up toxic constituents. We're just optimizing it and improving it through our process. So next slide. This is where I tell you that we have trained mushrooms to eat trash. I try to distill it down to not dumb it down, but I try to distill it down to this is absolutely what we're doing. We've developed a patent pending approach working with mycologists that leverages the mycelium, that fungal root structure, to consume toxins from waste and create new bio-based raw materials. What this allows us to do is create value where value didn't exist before. So all of those materials sit in landfill. They take up precious space. Landfill airspace is a premium. And we're starting to see lots of bans and regulations around this. And so there are few solutions that are addressing this construction and demolition waste stream, let alone circularity of those materials. And Mycelium provide a great platform for that. And so when I say we train mushrooms to eat trash, I have a lab in Bolingbrook, Illinois. We also have a facility down in Merida, Mexico, in the Yucatan, and in Poland. And we're running R&D to expose fungal mycelium to different types of waste, different petrochemicals. And we're able to move very quickly to vet which strains and species will do very well in digesting and absorbing and or consuming toxins within waste and converting into new materials. So how does it work? Next slide. We take materials in, we process them in a controlled environment, 4 weeks or less, and then we have a harvest of a new bio-based raw material. So it seems super simple to talk about it in 3 steps. We don't feel like it's much more difficult than that. We develop all of our own bulk treatment. So in a 1,600 square foot lab, for instance, in Bolingbrook, Illinois, we developed over 4 tons of treatment for projects we were scaling over the summer. And by the end of the summer, we had treated over 10,000 pounds of different materials at scale in the field. And so what we do is we work, we co-house with construction and demolition recyclers, and they're already handling the waste, so we don't have to get into logistics. They can size reduce those materials. We blend it with our proprietary blend, and we put it into an ambient condition. So fungi are a lot like us. You know, I feel like I'm like Us Magazine. Stars are just like us, right? They go shopping, they do this. Fungi like to eat, breathe, have some water, and be comfortable. And so we just provide those conditions for them. We've been looking at a variance between the treatment of 2 weeks and 4 weeks and different treatment rates. And we've been able to develop out great formulations that are very effective on a variety of different waste streams. And then the product out really is a new raw material. We call it microfiber or microfill. We're going after markets not completely comprised of a mycelium board stock. There are some of those markets, and I'll talk about that. We're really trying to make it easy to use new bio-based raw materials from waste by going into fillers and fibers and bulking agents. So things similar to calcium carbonate, magnesium hydroxide, perlite, that we would mine from the earth. So we're just trying to replace things that we would resource extract with things that we've already produced that are into the waste stream. So next slide. So we've been doing a lot of research and development. We're now in the building mode. We had a research project with Landfills, one of the world's largest property managers and building owners. They actually hold a communities contract for the US Army, and they've been doing a lot of base modernization programs. And so working with Landfills, Rubicon, who is also an innovator in the waste management space, we were charged with treating asphalt shingle waste that would go to landfill from their Fort Campbell Army base. So we took the show on the road and got out of the comfy confines of our lab and went to Lebanon, Tennessee, where we mobilized with Rockwood Sustainable Solutions. And they housed our project, and they were already handling the waste contract. And so, you know, I should say foundationally, we want to work with contracts that are in place, or we want to make it stupid simple to use us, because we know mushrooms eating trash is such a far out kind of concept that if that's the only thing that's weird and everything else is normal, then maybe it makes sense. So we had some research objectives to determine what species was best, how fast we could treat. Could we lower 4 weeks to 2? How much could it clean? Like how clean could we get it in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and based on different treatments. And then, you know, our methods, it was a large scale R&D project. We ran across 3 different species, 3 different blends, and those treatments are on the right-hand side. And then we took environmental tests, third-party environmental tests, which we always do. We don't do our own environmental tests. There are great labs out there. We don't need to be one of them. And those were taken every week to determine how we were measuring against the baseline. And so you could see that we went after different treatment methodologies. And for me, as a business person, this is super important to figure out, you know, how do we balance the cost of a new treatment versus the cost that's in the market for what is easy to do, right? We just put our trash in a bag and set it on the curb and we forget about it. So how do we make this attractive? Being able to work with a variety of different treatment options allows us to consider what our cost of goods are long term. So next slide. This is what happened. You can see some of the pictures back there, and I can share pictures with you on this. But we treated 2,000 pounds of shingles, so 1 ton in the field. We blended and incubated on site, and after 4 weeks, 87% of the heavy metals were reduced to non-detectable levels. And the total petroleum hydrocarbons were reduced as well. And the best news of all of this for us was some of the treatments did it in 2 weeks. And so what that told us is that we could absolutely optimize our blends, create favorable conditions. There was a lot of learning that came from this. The materials at the end of this went into a compost pile. They were clean enough to go to compost. And then some of the materials actually were taken and we sent them to Owens Corning, who's a major building manufacturer. And they're running research and development on how they might use that into new products. And so that's some of the gist of how we've been partnering with different corporate entities. And we also are in a research contract with the Department of Energy at Argonne National Labs to run research and development work. It's a 2-year paid fellowship where we get to work with their lab personnel, the brightest and smartest people working in biotechnology and new materials. And we will be starting in that contract within the next month or so to vet out the performance characteristics of the end product. Because I'm sure all of you know that if there isn't value at the end of it, markets collapse. So we're really, really focused on delivering the value as the process, but value as an end product. And the large goal would be able to just do waste management for free, right? But do it the right way and incentivize people to use new technologies like ours. So next slide. So here's my second inspiration, right? I said fungi are great cleaners, but they're also great builders. And all of this is part of the value creation. As we try to cycle waste out of the value stream, we need to create new uses for this. So while I was in my tenure as Director of Sustainability, I also chaired green chemistry teams. And I served on an EPA panel for environmentally preferred purchasing for paints and coatings and sealants. And it's in that time where you really start to look and say, could we actually lessen our dependence on petroleum-based derivatives, and what could we replace them with? And so fungi are natural builders. They're the rebar of the earth. They have very natural and inherent properties of being water resistant, so they're hydrophobic, flame resistant, insulation, and they're lightweight. We have a client who has 500 million tons of SBR crumb rubber waste. They're facing huge liability and restriction around this in the European markets where they are housed. And through some of our preliminary testing, we were able to improve the fire resistance of rubber 900% from the mycelium. So that's just nature flexing on all of us, right? Nature's going to do what nature's going to do. And so we really see the opportunity to use these composites as fillers, fibers, and bulking agents to improve performance and lower carbon all around the process. So next slide. So we'll go back to my, world without waste. I would just say, imagine a world without waste, right? I think we can get there. We have to look at innovation. It might look a little bit different, right? I'm in Chicago today to speak on a corporate innovation panel about how corporates could drive and deliver innovation at scale, and it's always with one step. But you have to think about nature-based solutions and the role nature plays in all of our evolution. There's no waste in nature. That's a man-made convention. And so I was able to see the inspiration from this course at Oregon State University and deploy it for our use. And my hope moving forward is that not only are we going to continue to thrive and grow and deliver value from new innovative technologies, and maybe fill this niche between the construction and demolition recyclers and manufacturers, like to provide a new raw material, but to also inspire others to kind of look around and say, hey, this does a great job of that. Could we, this nature-based thing is pretty cool. I love that beetle. Like, how can I put it to use for this? And so, I appreciate talking to groups like this where you guys are on the front line. You're trying to figure out how to reuse and deconstruct and and create new pathways, and hopefully this would serve as some form of inspiration to take you to that next step. So there's always a whole bunch of questions. And so I didn't want to do a super long presentation. And I don't get super deep into science unless people want to. So I'm going to stop there on my presentation and open it up for any questions if there's time.
I think that's great. And for folks virtually, feel free to take yourself off mute, go ahead and raise your hand or chat your question, and we'll go in order that we see them.
And I too cannot see the chat. So if there's a question that comes in the chat, just let me know.
Okay, sounds good. What questions do you have for Joanne and about this technology? First hand being raised is from John Howard. Go ahead, John, take yourself off mute or chat and mute, chat if you need. Oh, you're already off mute. I'll stop talking.
Hi. So I'm curious with the mushroom kind of the mycocycle and the kind of products there. Do those retain the heavy metals, or how does that how do the heavy metals get cycled through as part of this process?
Yeah, great question, because you can't make heavy metal disappear, right? It's always there. But fungi process in multiple ways, but one of the things we like is three main mechanisms. So bioabsorption, bioconversion, and biodegradation. And they actually sorb the metals and they make them less bioavailable. And so sometimes we get pushed back. People are like, oh, you could just put a whole pile of dirt in there with those shingles and you'd get the same result because you just bulked it and diluted the metals. No, the metal content of the materials is still exactly the same. It's still available, and it still poses an environmental risk. What the fungi do is they uptake them and they make them less available. They become part of the matrix, and they also there's some dilution of the toxicity of that as they change the nature of it. So the metal will always be there. It's just the exposure risk is lessened. There are additional processes that you can bolt on. Like if you really wanted to get rid of metal, you can put another process on there and basically wash the mycelium, take all the metal out. But we haven't been faced with that in our development yet, because the manufacturers we work with, what they're sourcing as raw materials have the metals in them. So they're going to be buying things that have the metal in it. If they can use it from waste, they don't really mind that the metal is in there. Plus, it's already been reduced in terms of its availability.
That's a good question. I was wondering that too myself. Other questions? We have Norm. Go ahead, Norm. Feel free to introduce yourself too.
Norm is on mute.
See if I can help with that. Norm, are you able to talk now? See if there's any settings on my end. And Norm, if you have access to chat, feel free to chat your question. Norm, we're still not able to hear you. I don't have any functionality. I can only mute you. I hear you. Go ahead, Norm.
Okay, good. I thought it was it's headphones. I'm Norm Riccan, Waste Not Systems. We do the Minnesota Material Exchange. So we do material exchanges, guides and directories for zero waste, reduce, reuse, and recycle. Question about your revenue model. Do you think that you will derive more revenue or a larger portion of revenue from dealing with problems that companies have with waste? In other words, companies paying you to deal with waste, or with revenue from the materials you produce?
Great question. For half of my existence of this company, I thought the revenue would be coming from the waste treatment side, right? From the remediation. Like, this is the big ticket. This is the thing. This is the thing. This is the thing. And then I was like, wait a minute. I can get 3 to 5 times the value in the resale of these materials as a new raw material. So it shifted a little bit right now. I think we're gonna see a 50-50 play. The waste streams we're dealing with are facing obsolescence in terms of their disposal. You know, the Ministry of the Environment in Quebec, they're banning construction and demolition waste. Certainty, as a manufacturer of asphalt roof shingles, has a comprehensive list of every landfill that will ban taking asphalt shingles within the next 12 to 24 months. We're going to serve a niche. So I think we're going to gain both, but I think big picture, the larger revenue opportunity for us will be in the resale of the materials into new products. Our revenue model operates with licensing and royalties in addition to per ton treatment of our inoculate.
Well, it's nice to get it at both ends.
It is. It's good if you can get it. It's funny. I get pushback a lot of times. They're like, well, you're a two-sided business platform. And I'm like, well, actually, no, I'm a circularity platform. I just happen to be able to get paid on both sides of it. And if people are willing to pay me for it, I'm willing to take it. I'm not going to say no at this point in time. But I think bigger picture, the ability to solve the waste issue by either decentralizing and so fanning out hub and spoke and co-manufacturing or co-processing at sites that are already there. We want to align with some of these small to mid-size recyclers to give them more tools to grow their operations. And so it will allow us to have the opportunity to revenue share as we grow and we start to sell these materials out in the market and gain royalty on the products.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next person who has her hand raised is Jennifer. Is it Morehouse? Is that how you pronounce your last name? Close. She's an environmental reporter at the Star Tribune newspaper, which is the largest newspaper distribution in Minnesota. Go ahead, Jennifer.
I have a quick question. Well, actually, it's not so much a question. Could you tell us more about your Mycocycle? What are they and what?
Were you able to get that, Joanne? I wasn't able to catch what you were asking, Jennifer.
Can you tell us more about the end products and what they are and how they would be used, what they would do with them? You're muted.
Joanne, you're muted now, Joanne.
I said all the smart things. I'm sorry. No. The end product that we see, so we're looking at what's called a bulking agent sector, like it's a raw material. So things like perlite, calcium carbonate, these materials go into everything from asphalt shingles, what we're treating, gypsum drywall, what we're treating, acoustic tiles that we're treating, into flooring, carpet, concrete, stone. Calcium carbonate's used almost in everything, and perlite as well. And the thing about those is those as raw materials, they're mined from the earth. So there's a carbon intensity to that. So we're very mindful to look at where we're able to lower carbon and close the gap on those supply chains. But as an example, where we see mycelium already being used as fully completed or finished products, Ecovative out of upstate New York has been making plastic-free packaging, completely compostable packaging for years. They're replacing all of the plastics with mycelium. Mycoworks, they're in the Bay Area. They are making a protein-free leather, an animal-free leather product. Very high-end. They're using a reishi mushroom strain to do that. And then there's companies over in the European markets and in the UK, Biome being one of them. They're making insulation boards using mycelium. So we follow a similar thesis, except that our end material isn't a completely finished product. It's a raw material. We could actually dovetail into their supply chains and help them meet their demands as well.
Do you have other questions, Jennifer?
No, thank you.
Thank you.
We have a question in chat from Minnesota architect Simona Fisher. She's also involved with the Builder Use Conference as well. Very cool technology, but I can't help wonder when working with an organic material, how do you control the fungi from continuing to disintegrate the new materials it is used to make? Also, how do you recycle the mycelium product itself? Thanks.
All right, so how do we stop growing, right? Because we're basically dealing with mold. Who wants a mold in their building? We fight very hard to keep it out. We fire it. We can low fire it. We can put it through infrared. We can expose it to the sun, or we could do flash finishing or flash freezing. Mycelium grow best between 60 and 90 degrees. And when they're exposed to either end of that spectrum, they stop growing. So we're able to deploy technologies at scale. We have looked at mycelium-based companies that are working like an alt protein. Nature's Find is one of them. They're using mycelium to create dairy, non-animal dairy products. They use a thermal convection oven, and they stop they call it killing. I don't like to call it killing, but they stop the growth within 7 minutes. So that's always a part of our process to stop it. There are some people that would like it. If this is a soil amendment, the mycelium is very favorable to regenerative ag, but for our liking, we'd like to stop the growth. Your other question was, how do we recycle the mycelium? So, I mean, right now, that is not necessarily a part of our conversation, because our intention is to sell it as a raw material into new products. And most likely, those are going to be intermingled with different adhesives and polymers and other not natural substrates. If we can get to a point in time where the market has a willingness for purely bio-based building products, and we can make something that can stand a 30, 50-year standard, then ideally we'd be able to just send that right back to the earth. But that's just not something we're looking at right now, because the market readiness isn't there, and we're not there yet either. I think there's a lot of great building products manufacturers. We'd rather let them at least move the needle on getting this waste into reuse via new raw materials versus building a whole new material that would be biodegradable out of the gate.
Simona, any follow-up questions to that response? I'll give her a chance to type in any questions or take herself off mute. She says, nope, thanks. And Norm has a question again.
Yes, I just have a question. You've emphasized the reuse or recycling of the materials back into building materials. Do you see any other applications where the material that's the decomposed material can be used, in other sectors of the economy as food for something, that sort of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. We turn the shingle mycelium composite from the Fort Campbell pilot into compost. So we turned it could be clean fill. So I mean, at the lowest level, it can go back to the earth because it's clean enough to do that. We could see it being an agricultural supplement. And if my mycologist was on here, Daniel Reyes, he would start to open the can of worms, literally. He'd talk about adding red wiggler worms to what we've already myceliated and completely create just a 100% kind of chemical-free situation. But I also see the opportunity to work with things like cannabis waste. We've already started working with some cannabis waste to create packaging back for the cannabis industry. There's a lot of packaging in this industry, and I can see some of the building materials that we deal with going into packaging as well. And so there are large organizations like L'Oreal that have initiatives around replacing plastics in their packaging. They're not really super specific on what the input has to look like. And so that opens up a very big opportunity for us to say, okay, can we take this building waste and create packaging, and maybe it's completely outside of the industry or industry agnostic. So the ability for Mycelium to fill a plastic replacement niche is very strong and already been proven. And we're seeing a lot of other manufacturers come to the table, like from the automotive industry, that would have interest in trying to make a next generation foam or replacement to some of the heavy plastics that they rely on.
And I guess the same thing might happen with the expansion of feedstock.
Absolutely. So we have worked with asphalt shingles. A lot of times what we work with are single stream, because we are running research and development even at the large scale. We want to have scientific method deployed, because again, we're dealing with something that seems so far-fetched that we want to be able to validate it. And so we've worked with roof shingles, roofing roll goods, insulation products in isolation, and then gypsum board and gypsum fines. And we see the opportunity for something like gypsum board or wood or paper byproducts to be food sources for the asphaltic and PAH containing materials. And so there's a real opportunity to commingle and or use these as feedstock or use other agricultural byproducts as part of our bulk treatment. Melissa, you're on mute.
Just realized that. Thanks. Another question came in from Nathan Reinbold. How do the packages get labeled as to prevent contamination of traditional recycling sources, such as paper, fiber, cardboard, etc.?
You mean like our stuff or the stuff that we treat?
I'm thinking your stuff, the stuff that you make, so that it, and Nathan, feel free to clarify.
So, I mean, we haven't had to worry about that just yet, but it is something we're going to have to address. We've started mocking up SDS sheets, particularly when we're sending our materials into Owens Corning or Tarkett or somebody else's material labs. They want to know what they're getting. And so we can mock up an SDS similar to what you would find for your asphalt shingle. But we talk about our species and what our input was. And we marry that with whatever the treatment, whatever the parent material was. So if it was asphalt or gypsum, or then we take that SDS and that becomes the package that we send. So that's how you know what's in there, because we know there's a lot of fungi phobia, and we just want to be as transparent as we can without like giving away all of our trade secrets.
Nathan, any follow-up questions on that based on that response?
No, it looks good. No, I was just thinking it's a whole nother opportunity for a new eco logo besides PLA or number 7. So it's great. Thank you.
Oh no, I would love that, right? Mycelium recycled. We'll put the mushroom number 1 and as the new eco label. But you bring up a very good point, Nathan, because there might be an appetite for bio-based solution, but there's not necessarily a readiness. So we have to wear many hats, and that's working in advocacy to try to get these technologies deployed. I serve through the Bipartisan Energy Council on the American Innovators Energy Network. We're looking a lot at the CHIPS Act and other acts that inspire, from the infrastructure bill. All of these things are spinning out of it. And so how do we create a landscape that makes a soft landing for a technology like mine and makes it easier to be adopted, and say for the federal government, the largest building holder, to use something like that? So it's not just building the one thing, it's building like all the things, because there's really not a code or approval for a mushroom composite made of shingles.
That's something that we've talked about quite a bit, about how we're, excuse me, how we're trying to work in a system. And so a lot of us can appreciate the fact that you are thinking holistically and system wide. We are trying to support supply, demand, workforce, all those things so that we can kind of rise together, everything at small bits, but all at once. And I know that's hard, and I appreciate that that is being a deliberate focus within your industry.
I think it has to be. I mean, and maybe it comes from my background and the, working from the product manufacturing side, trying to enter new products into market, and like the long length and long runway of testing and approvals. And then you start to enter in like, certifications and transparency and EPD and HPD. And like, there's a lot of masters to make happy. We have a client right now who we've proofed out the treatment for their materials, and then they're owned by a manufacturer, and that manufacturer wants to use it into their flooring products. The problem is that they're cradle to cradle certified. So to imagine that this waste stream would be used into their flooring product in some capacity, they'd lose that certification. So that means our direct engagement with the Cradle to Cradle Institute to say, let's have a little bit of logic around this. We're actually doing a very good thing to reuse this waste that's going to landfill into this new product. And so it's, there's some pioneering that's going on here. I'm happy to do it because I'm able to put all the skill sets to work, but it's also good to have these platforms to kind of educate and inform and have more people kind of go out and tell our story as well.
We have time for one more question. Does anybody have any last questions or comments to make? Well, again, if you want to hear a bit more of a detailed question and answer series opportunity, as well as many, many other speakers, another shout out to the Build Reuse Conference, October 18th through 20th.
Well, thank you all. I won't be available for the networking because I have to go back upstairs. But if there's any questions, feel free to shoot me an email or send them through Melissa. Happy to engage, and I'm so enthusiastic about all of you gathering on a quarterly basis to try to tackle these issues. So I appreciate you giving me the time to kind of talk about this today.
Jennifer, I saw your hand go up and down a couple times. Did you have a question or comment? And you're muted too.
The function wasn't working for some reason. It was just a question I realized I forgot to ask. Are you venture backed? The company, Glenn, are you venture backed?
Oh, we actually are in our seed round right now. We have a lead investor out of the Bay Area. So we have a good mix as in our seed round of venture capital, of angels and syndicates, as well as one corporate venture, TELUS Pollinator Fund for Good out of Toronto. So we're going to be oversubscribed on this round, I think, which is good news. This has taken years off my life to go out there and pass the hat, but it's part of what you do. And but we're really looking to pilots. To pilot and gain revenue kind of the old-fashioned way, but we need more people in the team. And so yeah, we have venture capital in there, as well as a good mix of dilutive and non-dilutive capital that have come in.
I did throw Joanne's email address into chat. So for folks that do have chat access, you are welcome to send her an email with other questions. And actually, if you do have questions, it may be something that we will use questions and answers for the Build Reuse Conference session that Joanne and I will be presenting at. If you don't have access to chat and want to get a hold of Joanne and didn't find her website or whatever, feel free to reach out to me, because I'm assuming all of you have my email address. Otherwise, you probably wouldn't be here. Joanne, thank you so much. I appreciate your time today, and I know you're so busy. Thank you very much.
No, thank you all, and I appreciate the thoughtful questions, and can't wait to do this again with you in another couple weeks.
Sounds good. Take good care.
Bye.
For those of you who are a little bit newer to these meetings, we really don't take a break. We kind of power through all 2 hours, and sometimes we go a little late or end a little early. But I'm going to reshare the presentation so that I can turn it over to our folks from Better Futures Minnesota. And this is a topic that kind of came up recently, but also very, very good timing when I found out that there were some updates that I think are actually very informational or will be informational for all of you to hear. So it ended up being a really good opportunity to have folks from Better Futures present. So it'll just give me just a second to get the presentation up. Jason and Alex, if you'd like to go ahead and introduce yourself while I prep the slides, feel free to do that. And Jason, you're on mute.
There we go. Jason Allen with Better Futures. My title is Waste Diversion Project Manager.
I'm Alex Baldwin with Better Futures Minnesota. I'm our waste diversion manager. So
how does that differ? They sound really similar.
I report to him. So that's the
okay.
There's the difference.
So yeah, so the waste diversion project was bigger than one person to handle, and so I recruited the muscle Alex to help me manage it.
Great.
And we'll kind of talk a little bit more about the project.
So presuming you can see slide 14 of your logo.
I can. So for those of you who don't know us, Better Futures, we are a nonprofit, and we work with men coming out of incarceration, helping these men with stable housing, workforce development. We help them get connected with healthcare, and we also help them with life skills coaching. A lot of these men have been shut out of opportunities. And one of the things, or actually two of the pillars of what we do, the housing and the workforce development, studies have shown that if one of those two are not there, the chance of recidivism is higher. We are in our 15th year of operation. And we just did some reporting, and we found that men who are going through our model, it's a 2-year model. Right now, we're at about 4%. Recidivism, so we're doing well with the area of men that we're able to support. And so the title of this presentation is Creating Jobs Statewide by Diverting Materials from Landfills. So this is our third, and Alex, correct me if I'm wrong, this is our third iteration of funding of LCCMR grants. LCCMR, the Legislative Citizens Commission on Minnesota Resources. Basically, it's lottery money. So we were awarded a grant, and actually, Melissa, I'm sorry, we can go to the next slide. Here's the thing about Better Future. Sorry, folks. Housing, jobs, coaching, and health. Melissa, I'm gonna have you go to the next slide. All right, so there's our project. So it's the project is over 2 years, a $2.4 million grant funded through, again, LCCMR. One of the main things for our project is to divert 15,000 tons of solid waste from the state's landfills. We're looking to create 13 living wage jobs to support the waste diversion initiatives. We're looking to partner with cities and counties across the state, as well as identify businesses that can be end markets for these reclaimed materials. So one of the things that we've done with this is try to take what we're doing here locally in the metro area and export it out state. And we have one municipality, Becker County, that we have been working with up in Detroit Lakes doing waste diversion. If we can go to the next slide, Melissa. All right, so Alex, I'm gonna let you talk about this one.
Sure. So we've been doing deconstruction for coming up on about 10 years. I'm used to explaining deconstruction to, I think, a less informed audience. I think the majority of people here know what it is, but basically carefully dismantling a building so that the components can be reused or recycled, as opposed to demolition. And we provided some numbers here that, basically a your average full deconstruction, which is taking down an entire building, is saving roughly 20,000 pounds of materials. It does vary greatly by the project. I mean, people have different sized homes. We're deconstructing different sized buildings. But it does give you a sense of if our goal for this grant for this project is 15,000 tons, and your average deconstruction, full deconstruction, salvages 20,000 pounds. It's definitely an ambitious total to obtain. So we do roughly, on a busy year, I would say 70 to 75 deconstruction projects in our area, the Twin Cities. And we've had previous pilot programs where we've gone to St. Louis County, performed several deconstruction projects for them in that area. But we've always been wanting to push it more, I guess, statewide, instead of concentrated in just the cities. And so we do see, the reason we're talking about deconstruction is that we see this grant as a great vehicle to provide our deconstruction services outside of the cities. Yeah, so next slide, Melissa, please. So launching in, Jason, do you want to take this, or?
I'll take this one.
Right.
So as Alex said, the 15,000 tons is a very ambitious number, and we're not able to do that by ourselves. So we're looking to enlist the help of others as we take this model throughout the state. And one of the things that we wanted to do was find at least 3 cities or counties to partner at their transfer stations. And we started with a pilot, and we have a signed operating agreement with Becker County. And also one of those 13 full-time jobs, we have a full-time Better Futures employee on site doing material diversion. And that person also assists with retail sales efforts at the Becker County landfill. And what's interesting with this project, it started, again, as Alex said, as a pilot about 1.5 years ago. And once again, looking to export our model. Initially, we had hired an inmate of the Becker County Jail who would get out on work release and then was brought to the transfer station, and he would go to the various piles in this transfer station and sort and find items that could be reused, repurposed, and resold. And then we would go up, myself and Alex went up about 4 or 5 times for some pop-up sales and had sales events at the county transfer station. And the success of those initiatives, Becker County actually now has a building built that is dedicated to the sale of items that are reclaimed from the transfer station. And our employee helps in those retail efforts. And approximately there's about 1.5 tons of waste diverted from the landfills of Becker County of people just buying these items. And what's interesting about that is, and one of the things we forgot to talk about, we talked about deconstruction, was of the 80 to 90% of the materials that we reclaim, we have a 17,000 square foot retail reuse warehouse located in South Minneapolis. And so what's interesting is when people come to our warehouse, they realize that these items have been reclaimed or donated. And you take that and when you look at people going to a landfill, those items were literally in the trash and someone pulled them out, and there's still enough value where people are buying those items. And so for future, as we look at the next 18 months, we're looking to bring on 2 additional transfer stations, whether it's a city or a county. So that's one of the other areas that we're looking to divert these 15,000 tons. Melissa, we can go to the next slide.
Can I also mention that staff member was a Green Corps member? That
of course you can.
And should be, I believe, present at this meeting. So
I saw Steve Skoog. Lisa, are you joining us today?
Yes, I am.
Well, hey, Lisa.
Excellent.
Hello.
Fantastic. Lisa, well, so she participated in the last year of Green Corps program and had a great experience with Becker County staff working with Better Futures. So great multi-pronged partnership there. So, okay, I'll go to the next slide now.
All right. So one of the other things that we wanted to do was take our show on the road. At our warehouse, again, most of the lion's share of our inventory comes from our deconstruction projects, but we do have people drive up with donations of building materials that they want to donate. And so there's a couple cities that are looking to get to zero waste and reduce landfill consumption. And so we are working with the city of Bloomington. That hasn't started yet. We're targeting November 7th as a pilot, as a start for the pilot program to do curbside bulky item pickups in the city of Bloomington. We are doing some curbside collection in the city of Columbia Heights. Columbia Heights is kind of an interesting relationship. They were one of a few municipalities that were, I want to say they were basically out of service through waste management. Waste management was able to serve, I think, 6 cities, and Columbia Heights was one of them. And so we've developed a great relationship with Columbia Heights as a result of that. And so that's helping us towards our goal of 15,000 tons. Melissa, we can go to the next slide. All right, Alex, you're up.
And before I move on to this, Jason, you reminded me, I mean, when we talk about our relationship with Becker County and how great it's been, we are looking to partner with, I believe under this grant, it's going to be 2 additional transfer stations statewide. So we're excited about that, and hopefully replicating the model that we have in Becker County at the moment. So another part of our grant, we're working with NRI, which is the University of Minnesota Duluth. We call them the wood scientists. I don't know if
Natural Resource
I think they like that term.
Research Institute.
Yes, yeah. But we are coming up with prototypes that can be built utilizing reclaimed materials. One of our participants in-house, Melvin, came up with this bench. There are plans available, kind of general plans available for it online, but our version utilizes all reclaimed lumber. It's beautiful stuff. So I just put that picture in there as an example of what we're making in-house with these reclaimed materials that are being salvaged either from curbside pickups, transfer stations, or deconstruction projects. And they are available for sale. Yeah. So let's see, Melissa, next slide, please.
I also wanted to mention, do you guys work with Victor, with Vic Kraus?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Yep.
So he's speaking at the Build Reuse Conference. I'm going to throw into chat. Oops, I did not format it. Sorry, it's so big. He is presenting on a number of different initiatives that are going on in the built environment. So he is speaking on Thursday, October 20th. So just wanted another shout out for the Build Reuse Conference.
Yeah, so Victor Kraus is our main go-to wood scientist and has been instrumental in past projects and then also with this grant. We're coordinating, several additional prototypes in addition to the bench you just saw, plus, this wall art that is, end cuts from 2x4s. Basically made using those, and hopefully we'll see them hanging on walls in places. But it's neat stuff, and I just threw that in as an example of the type of stuff we're doing here through the grant, utilizing reclaimed materials.
Hey, Alex.
Yes.
And those tables behind you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. I'm in this room for a reason. I could showcase our other additional prototypes that we're coming up with. And ideally, we would like to, at some point, move beyond reclaimed lumber. We're looking at other types of materials that can be used on a larger scale than just one-off pieces. And that is what Victor and NRI are working on as well. So thank you for that, Jason.
Oh, you're very
I
welcome.
don't know if it's clear or not, but
Yeah, those are cool.
All right, next slide. There you go. So yes,
yeah,
before, well,
yeah. So there are 4
additional
additional prototypes in addition to the 2 that you just saw. So
rainwater collection, privacy screen, a chair, and a couple tables. So stop into our warehouse when they're available. They'll be for sale.
A rainwater collection, like a more than a barrel, or different from a barrel, or
We got to talk to Victor on that. That's his brainchild. So he will be coming into the warehouse before the conference to gather materials to work on for his on the prototypes.
Very cool.
That might be
I
it
think,
for us.
I think we have one more slide, Melissa.
Oh yes. So also part of our project, there's a couple things. One of the things we talked about, I think I may have glossed over in one of the earlier slides, was to identify businesses that want to work with reclaimed materials that may be an end market for some of the materials that we're able to gather through our diversion activities. And then also look to identify up to 2 businesses that are looking to start in this space and provide assistance to them in navigating that process and getting their businesses launched. So we're going to be busy over the next 18 months, and that's what we had to bring Alex on.
Can I make a comment about that?
For sure.
So not to give anything away for next week, but the Hennepin County presentation that's part of the virtual track, but also if people are there in person, they've been reaching out to contractors who are doing on-site salvage of materials, so not necessarily full deconstruction, but salvaging and reusing material and stuff that's not necessarily going through a warehouse like yours or Better Future or Better Habitat or scrapbook salvage, places like that, but they're just doing direct site. And that, what you just said, is identifying the outlets more clearly for those end markets is something that's coming up as like a real strong need. So I think that's probably not news to people who are in this field, but very much what they're finding in this project that Hennepin County funded to collect this information is that those end markets are most definitely, some of the biggest things. So I don't know if you all are planning on staying the entire day on Tuesday, but you might want to go to that session because there might be some interesting things once that report's all done too, out of that, where there's some synergies for your work already.
Perfect.
Emily, I'm typing something in chat. Do you want to say another sentence or 2 about the Reuse Minnesota conference so that I can stall just a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, I can't add a link because I can't see chat today for some weird reason, but we do have the virtual conference available. We're at our we had to cut it off for in person, kind of just you gotta do that someday, but we do have that. And as I mentioned, there is the last session of the day that's virtual is all about building material, the study that Hennepin County is doing, but there's a whole bunch of other topics throughout the day. So if people are interested, and there are a couple more spots at the tour at Scrapbox Salvage if anyone is interested in that as well. Patrina's very, very familiar with the Better Futures program and also doing that work as well now. So if anybody's interested, that's Monday afternoon.
I am I had posted a link to registration for the event, and I was just going to see if I could find quickly the sign up for that tour. I had been given a personal tour from Patrina, who I know was on, I think still on the call, of Scrapbox Salvage. And what a view, what a neat variety of materials, what great quality items people can buy where they're paying a lot less than new. So it is a tour I think you don't want to miss.
Yeah, if you do reusemn.org/site-visits, then you can click through. You can see the other tours that are being offered too. It's not just that one.
Of course,
And you
on
don't
your
have to
website.
attend the rest of the conference to go to those. So if you're just interested in a tour and you can't do the conference, you can do those too.
Awesome. I did throw the link in a second time, so at the beginning of the meeting and just now. And Megan from Native Sustainability had to just hop off, but she asked via email if I could include a link to a survey that I did share with many of you recently, yesterday morning, I believe, a reuse survey that working with Reuse Minnesota to find out reuse habits from businesses, from government entities and all that. So she made a quick note. Oh, we haven't heard back from anybody at Better Futures yet, but again, I just shared it yesterday, though I presume that she shared it before yesterday. So if you are so inclined, feel free to fill out that survey. Less than 10 minutes, I believe. Well, great. Well, do people have questions for those at Better Futures? Or ways that they might be interested and willing to partner with Better Futures? We have Norm from iWaste. Go ahead, Norm.
Just curious about how you're tracking your materials, figuring out, first of all, easy enough to look at poundage and so on. Are you doing any breakdown of types of materials that are coming out, and kind of a tracking of what's happening to them, where they're going to, that sort of thing?
Yes. So for our how we track, Alex, I'll let you explain how we track for deconstruction, and I'll talk about the others.
Yeah, so Norm, I wouldn't say that we track exactly where it ends up. We do, I think I just froze. We do, classify materials by type, and we are weighing everything, obviously, but we work with Ecotone, who does our environmental reporting. I'm not sure if I'm answering the question or not.
And then so Norm on
No, that's fine.
Yep, and then so Norm on the donations and curbside pickups, we do similar to materials, looks like we do for deconstruction projects. So as items come into our warehouse, we will track them by type and weight. And as Alex said, we don't, most of the items that we sell out of our warehouse, we don't know, once they're sold, we don't know the end use.
Right, okay. The reason I'm asking, a few years ago, Mike Gable at the Pittsburgh Restore, it's not Restore, but Construction Junction, I think it's called, worked on a retail reuse project to try to automate and digitize the tracking and the retailing of materials through their facility and the service they provide. And I don't think that project ended up being successful, but I think that there's renewed interest now, and I would think that all of the folks in the industry that you're working in, which is deconstruction and reuse, would at some point be interested in a better system. What the problem with the retail reuse, as I saw it, was entry of data was a choke point. It was just too difficult to type in everything into the forms that they had set up. And by the time you got finished typing everything in and getting all the details on the material, you end up with a 20-minute process. And so it was just too much red tape. But since then, that was about 10 years ago or 7 or 8 years ago, with AI and with some of the stuff that's on the internet, like being able to take a photo of something and identify what it is through the use of technology, we're kind of interested in looking at seeing whether there might be an easier input process. And once you get the information in, it's just then a simple process of doing software development to track and report. And reporting is so important because all the funders want to know how much material, but they also want to know how much greenhouse gas you're avoiding, and how much money came in and how much money went out and for what material. And from what we can see, the kind of the restore operations and the construction junction operations, and Mike Gable would agree with it. He says, like I've got 10,000 square foot warehouse and not a barcode in the place. So it's something we're kind of looking at. But anyhow, I wondered what you guys were doing. Thanks.
Well, actually, Norm, it's interesting that you bring that up. That's actually another focal point of our grant work. We're working Ecotone, as Alex had mentioned, does our environmental impact reporting, and we have contracted through them an app developers, and they're working on an application for us for that. And as we were, the initial idea was, like you talked about, taking photos to catalog these items. There's a couple things that kind of, at this point, that won't be a viable option for the application. But to your point, one of the things that, as the developers were putting this together, it was the entry of the information. And so they try to simplify that. And so we are in the process of developing an application for that very thing. And it will, so basically the inputs will be what the majority of the makeup of the item. And then in the back end, it will give you those environmental impacts.
Great. I'd be interested in connecting with Ecotone. We have the same issue with waste exchanges. Entry of information into a waste exchange is a barrier to use of them. So maybe I'll get your information, give you a shout, and see
Okay.
if you guys could connect us with them so that we could maybe collaborate.
For sure.
Great, thanks.
Norm, Jason, and Alex, if I were just to send an email to the three of you and just say, talk to each other, is that good enough?
Yep, that works.
Okay. I will start that now. There's a question from Ashley Stevenson. Go ahead, Ashley.
Good afternoon. I'm Ashley, the Director of Community Reclamation at Reclaim in Newcastle, Pennsylvania. We are very similar to your Better Future in the fact that we deconstruct and reuse, bring in donations, have our retail establishment here. We've been around for 3 years, but just bought our warehouse just about a year ago, open to the public. But that was kind of along the lines of my question. What Norm had asked was, how are you tracking your inventory management? And he kind of answered that for me, talking about Mike Gable and Construction Junction. Reuse retail app is working wonderfully. We utilize that here at our retail store, and it really, really helps with our inventory tracking. It is really simple. I'm on my iPad talking to you guys right now. It is an app that you get on there. If it's something, I'm looking at your website as we've been listening here, and it seems like you have a lot of the same items that you receive in and cannot receive in for your donations, but tracking of those donations was really hard naturally at first, like we were saying. But the reuse app is amazing. Like I said, it's you pick your own hierarchy, you can add anything that you want on it. I mean, obviously the types of things that we receive in are different than any other retail store out there, but it kind of works out great, because if you have your typical donors who come in, or Alex, for your deconstructions, what you can do is in your hierarchy, whenever you receive in your donations, it gives you a D number, and you can classify, say, I just got done working at 506 Spruce Street and we received an X amount of items from there. You can enter them into your inventory under that. So whenever you go onto your Salesforce, or we work off of Square here, then you can track that very easily, run your reports, put it into an Excel spreadsheet, and then probably then send it to Ecotone to help you manage your tonnage or your environment.
I'm sorry, what'd you say the name of the app was again?
So it's, as Norm was saying, it's a reuse retail app,
Okay.
and it is actually piloted by Construction Junction. Construction Junction is about an hour south of us here. And we work closely with Mike Gable and Missy Mongelli. She's the COO at Construction Junction, but we were kind of the guinea pig for them.
Yeah, I had a couple of virtual meetings with Missy. Yep, familiar with them. Okay, thank you.
Great girl. But yeah, I mean, I'd look into it. We even have a gentleman. He's our Clear Mind consultant, so he's like my go-to guy that I'm able to constantly reach out. We are still working out some small bugs, but for the most part, I'd say that it's up and running perfectly, 97.5%. But I mean, it's much better than as Norm was saying, probably 7 to 10 years ago. So
thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. We can, I can send you guys some emails and try and connect you with them and the consultants as well, if it would help by any means. It's a very, very, very cheap program to run, especially for nonprofits like ours.
All right.
That'd be great.
Would you like me to introduce the three of you via email?
For sure.
Yeah, that would be great, Melissa.
Great. Okay, we're running a little short on time, so I am going to have to cut off questions, but Alex and Jason, thank you very, very much for being willing to have a fast turnaround time to present this, though I know that this has also been helpful for you to get the word out and to kind of ground yourself in sort of the work. And Nathan did include the link for Construction Junction, which I actually did have a chance to tour during the 2019 Build Reuse conference the last time it was in person, and it is impressive. It was my first reuse retail store that I'd been through. Of course, since then been at Better Futures and Scrapbox Salvage, Better Habitat for Humanity Restores, and they're all great. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
We're going to jump right into a networking opportunity, and I'm going to share my screen on a different monitor because for some reason the slides did not save. And double checking chat. Nope. Construction Junction. Great. So again, one of the opportunities that people asked about, and I'm going to stop recording now because this will be small groups.